Welcome to the Leadership Boost. Leadership Boost. Boosting your leadership into high performance with your host, Sean Smith. Updating you with the points and principles to sharpen your skill so you can make a difference and have an impact in whatever leadership role you find yourself in right now. Forget the fluff and get the stuff with Sean.
Welcome to the Leadership Boost. Welcome to Relationship Saturday. This is an episode I do every Saturday, just really focused on marriage relationships, whether you are in leadership or you just busy getting ready to getting engaged or getting married, preparing to get married. There's this place, I've been doing this for 40 years, been married nearly 40 years, and Michelle and I, my wife Michelle and I, we got started on a rocky foot. We didn't have any real input into our life, into our marriage, and so we had to, accept being told, well, this is important, that's important, you need to do this, you need to do that, and walked away, had no idea how to practically work that out. And what we discovered, of course, is that we're two different people coming from different backgrounds, thrown together into one little apartment, and suddenly you discover you are so different. And now we have different values, different points of view, different things. And, even though we had gone out for 2 years, suddenly we're thrown together, and now we've got to deal with the practical issues. And so it's so much more than just getting a scripture verse or a couple of principles of marriage. Now you've got to begin to work out what that relationship is going to look like. So that began a journey for us. And so over 40 years, Michelle and I have done a lot of marriage counseling, a lot of work, but I discovered something over those years. I discovered there's a few principles that need to be communicated, discussed. There needs to be planning. There needs to be areas of understanding coming into the relationship to actually work out a great relationship. Great to see you, Lorraine. Thank you for hopping on this live broadcast with me. Good to have you. So I am also right now going on to the Leadership Boost podcast, and this is Relationship Saturday. So we're talking today basically about just one key to overcome distractions in your relationship. How do you overcome distractions in your relationship? And there's one word for it, and that is focus. Where do you focus? You can either focus on what's tearing you apart, or you can focus on what's keeping you together. It's very easy to get distracted by the things that you differ on, your disagreements. It's very easy to begin to focus and you get distracted, and that becomes your focus. So you get distracted and you're focusing on what's tearing you apart. And you begin to focus on the areas where you disagree, where you don't see eye to eye, where you have major differences, or there's arguments develop over areas of unmet expectations, where you are now unhappy with situations. So you can either focus on what's broken, or you can focus on what's whole. You can either focus on what's not working, or you can focus on what is working. You can either focus on what you do have, or you can focus on what you don't have. And what I'm saying there is I married this person. What do I have in them? I married them for a reason. We're in a relationship for a reason. And these principles, of course, apply in whatever relationship you find yourself in, as far as work, as a leader, whatever focus. And of course, my focus is a lot on leaders. And this is one of the reasons I talk about relationships, because oftentimes leaders can be successful in their professional life, successful in their ministries, successful in their role as a leader. But when it gets to the significant relationship at home, there's a major breakdown. And so neglect builds in, there's a lack of focus, a lot of distraction. And so over time, this begins to wear out and begins to break down that relationship, that significant relationship, which is at home. And so there needs to be a constant planning, constant focus, constant building in to that relationship. And so you can focus on unmet expectations, like what I don't have, what I should have had, what I could have had, what I would have loved to have. You know, in retrospect, you can look back, but when you meet the person that you're in a relationship with now, when you get married to them, you actually, you know, they were everything. Then suddenly over time, the focus changes, and begins the problem of distracting you from what it is that you do have. And so you focus on what you have, don't focus on what you don't have. Life gets blurry. You know, life can, so many things, your children come along, you've got your careers, you're buying a house, you've got family issues, you've got friends, you've got your social life, you've got so many things going on, and it's so easy for life to get blurry at that point in time. But that is when you need focus. That's when you need to build focus into your relationship. Focus, what you focus on becomes your reality, and what you focus on controls your life. So if you're focusing on what's tearing you apart, what's broken, what's not working, what you don't have, then suddenly that becomes the reality of your life. You start to, look at this, everything is wrong and nothing is working, and we come to this sort of distracted concept of we were never meant for each other. We've fallen out of love. So, and as I've said many times, is love, you don't fall into love and fall out of love. Love is a decision that you make to commit yourself to that person for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens. And when you do, and you begin to focus on what keeps you together, what is whole about your life, what is whole about that person, when you begin to focus on what is working with you, why are you together, what is working, what makes you two happy. We get so quickly focused on the things that we're unhappy about. We get so quickly focused on, I'm unhappy and because of this, so these expectations are not being met, and we begin to focus on the things that I'm unhappy about, that's not working. If we focus on what is working and we focus on what you do have, then suddenly the reality of the world begins to change. The whole atmosphere begins to change. Unfortunately, when you're thinking about what's tearing you apart, what's broken, what's not working, what you don't have, it becomes very self-centered. You become very selfish about what you don't have and what is tearing me apart, how I'm feeling, etc., etc. So basically, that becomes the reality of your world, and it begins to control your life. It begins to control your thinking. It controls your decision. It controls your reactions, your responses. It controls, how you act, how you behave, etc. So we've got to begin to changing the focus. Changing the focus begins to determine your priorities. And suddenly, when you focus on the right things, and it's a major step that you have to, it's another decision, another commitment that you have to make to begin to focus on the right things, to focus on the things that are working, that are keeping you together, that is whole, that is right. Focus on those things, and the other things will begin to, those distractions, in fact, begin to melt away. You're never going to find the perfect person. You're never going to have a perfect relationship. Marriage is all about being committed and loving through the hell, through the trials, through the tests, through the difficulties, through the disagreements, and finding your friendship, loving that person even when they don't feel like you're best friends, but you are, and getting back to it and saying, hey, you are my best friend. We have shared good things together. We have, focus on the things that you do have. Go and look at some pictures of the happy days. Look at some of the pictures when you had happy days. And it takes a decision. Emotionally, sometimes you want to fight it. I'm hurt. I'm disappointed. And most of those times is because you've got unmet expectations, frustration, anger. But that's when you need to focus yourself and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to focus on what is right, what we do have. And I'm avoiding specifically, focusing on the positive, because just focusing on positive is too big. It is focusing on things that matter, things that actually are working. That's what I want to really encourage you with. So you can't determine the outcomes of your relationship or the outcomes of your future. You can't determine people's lives. You can't determine how they are going to be. But what you can focus on is building the best into your relationship. Build the best into your relationship. That's what you can focus on. Over time, the outcomes will be determined by what you focus on. So if you keep focusing on the negative, if you keep focusing on what's not working, what you don't have, then over time, that becomes the outcome. It just grows and grows and grows. And it's like nearly a self-determining process that you have embarked on. Is ultimately you're going to sit down and say, yes, it's not working. But you've forgotten what was working. You forgot to focus on what is working. You forgot to focus on what is keeping you together, what is whole in your lives, what you do agree on. But many times what we do is because we're not communicating, because we're not taking the time to understand, because we're not taking the time to listen, to focus on those areas and find those areas that are in agreement. That's what happens. We begin to get distracted to the things that don't work. For instance, if you're going to focus on communication, the big elephant in the room is communication. Now, communication is more than just speaking. You understand? Communication is who you are. Communication, you're always communicating, even in the things that you don't do. So when you roll your eyes, when you give that, that's communicating. When you ignore somebody, when you reject them, and I'm specifically talking about your marriage partner, then all of that contributes to communication. You're communicating something all the time, even when you don't say anything. Your attitude manifests in who you are, and that communicates something to your spouse. You can either be communicating wholeness, value, priority. You can either be communicating those things, communicating that desire, passion. You could romance. You can intimacy. You can be communicating those things, or you can be communicating you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You better jump the hoops. You're not meeting the obligation. Expectations are out. What happens at that point in time? The distance, the gap, the chasm, is that what the word, grows wider and wider. And so now suddenly you become two islands, and it becomes again the self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense, because down the line you go, you see, we don't agree on anything, but you did. You used to. You were in agreement on a lot of things. You disagree on a lot of things, but you do agree on some things, and that's the things you focus on. So if you're going to focus on communication, don't focus on communication. We're going to communicate more. What does that mean? You need to focus on an action. Focus on something. Focus on an area, whether it is to listen more intently. I'm focused on this year or the next 6 months or the next 3 months. I'm going to pay more attention. I'm going to listen more intently. I'm going to use both ears instead of one mouth. I'm going to express myself more clearly. I'm going to think about what I say, and I'm going to say it more clearly. I'm going to express not just how I feel, but I'm going to express how I feel about you. I'm going to express my feelings, and sometimes you need to take a step of faith in that and say good things, And so, but I'm going to express myself more clearly. I'm going to choose my times purposefully. when my times to communicate, my times to listen, I'm going to choose. Don't talk when discuss difficult situations or discuss irrational feelings when you're tired or the atmosphere is emotionally charged. Don't use those times. Choose times when you're relaxed and you're going to have a better outcome. It's focus. That's what I'm trying to say, is that's where you focus. When you focus on one of those things, I've given you like 3-4 of them now, is that, choose something, but focus on that. Choose a positive thing. We do discuss things, and we can discuss things properly when we're not tired, when we're not hungry, and when we're not emotionally charged up, So trying to, it's like Stephen Covey says, don't teach a person that's drowning how to swim. You give them a lifeline. And sometimes we just need to be with the person. Sometimes we need to just encourage them. We need to, and sometimes encouraging is not even verbal. It's just being there, being present, giving them a hug, being there for them and supporting their journey, whatever they're going through, being the support for them. So what I'm trying to say is focus on something, focus on an action, focus on something small that you can do. Focus on something that's going to keep you together, that is keeping you together. Focus on what's whole. Because if you begin to focus on something else, then everything changes. It becomes, like I say, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your focus is your future, and what you focus on, somebody said, will multiply in your relationship. What your focus is your future. Think about that. Your focus is your future, and what you focus on will multiply in your life and in your relationships. So that's what I basically want to leave with you, to think about. Hey, Nick, good to see you. Thanks for hopping on. When we focus in the right areas, then that's what we produce in our life. Focus laser-like, don't be a torchlight, a flashlight. A flashlight is like all over the place and it's like this wide and lights up everything. Be laser-like. Really focus on those areas that you can work on to make a difference. And that's why, when it comes to marriage, I always encourage people to take the time, find the things that are important to you, begin to discuss them, find what's important to your spouse, and begin to discuss and communicate why they're important. So understanding gets built in, so you can begin to focus on the things that make you whole, the things that are whole, the things that you do enjoy together, the things that you do agree on. And when it comes to disagreements, when you're focused on what you agree on, then the disagreements become a lesser of a distraction to your life and to your marriage and to your relationship. All right, so just a practical thought that I wanted to leave with you for Relationship Saturday. Thank you for being with me. This is the Leadership Boost podcast episode. Thank you for my listeners, and to my Facebook friends and family, thank you for hopping on and thank you for being with me. And God bless you. Have a great weekend. It's over and out.